Sup guys, in today's video I'm going to be sharing the 7 steps that you need to be doing every single time you receive either your paycheck or some form of money into your bank account. I have now been following this exact routine for the past 8 years, and I would like to say it's been one of the main catalysts that has helped me build a net worth of £350,000 before the age of 30. So if you are ready for this video, get your pens and pads ready, hit that like button down below, and let's jump straight into it. Alright then, so let's put ourselves in the position where it's the end of the month and we have just received our paycheck from either our job or maybe some money from a business that we're running. Oh, and quick disclaimer by the way, this video is not based on a certain amount of money that you need to make. This can be done on any kind of income. This step by step is completely based on percentages, so just something to keep in mind. But having said all that, let's get into step number 1, and with step number 1, you are going to need to do something which is called paying yourself first. Now, what does this mean? Well, with paying yourself first, unlike the traditional form of saving money where you would simply budget throughout the month and then whatever is left over you would put into a savings account, with paying yourself first, we actually flip that psychology or method on its head and we actually do things the opposite way round. So instead of doing it at the end of the month before we get our next paycheck, what we do is when we first receive our paycheck, we make sure that the first thing that we decide to do is actually set aside some money in a different account that is going to go towards savings or investments. What we then actually decide to do with that money is something that I'm going to be talking about in the later steps, so stay tuned for that. But in terms of the percentage of your salary that you should be paying yourself first with, I like to say obviously try and go for as much as possible, but I would like to say to everyone to aim at a minimum of 10%. Step number 2 is once you have paid yourself first, what you're then going to want to do is sit down and evaluate what essential payments you have coming out of your account over the next month, and then what you're going to do there is take the amount of the money that is going to be coming out, put it in a completely separate account, and do not touch that account for the rest of the month. This is going to be classed as your bills account, and this is something that you should do, like I said, at the start of every single month as soon as you get paid. Now when it does come to the amount, this shouldn't actually change too much on a month-to-month basis, but sometimes there are some essential payments that don't come out every single month. I'm talking about things like dentist appointments, maybe you have to put your car in for a service or an MOT, anything like that which is still classed as an essential payment. You still need to plan ahead, because the last thing that you're going to want to do is put that money aside and then realize that you've kind of under budgeted and then you haven't got enough money to pay those essential payments that just come out maybe once or twice a year. Now why do I say put it in a completely separate account, lock it away in a drawer maybe so you can't touch it? Well, this is pretty much so you can stop worrying about having to pay your bills for the rest of the month, because you know you've got it covered because you've done the work up front and you've put that money aside already. And I personally think this is so important for your mental health when it comes around money, because one thing that I actually did whilst researching this video was I actually checked out a survey that was actually ran by the Metro's Mentally Yours podcast, and the results in it were quite shocking. Just a couple of the findings from the surveys read that 77% of UK residents claimed that they were stressed about money, which is absolutely insane, with 17% of them describing themselves as very stressed. On top of this, 14% of people said that they worried about money every single day. Imagine having to worry about money every single day of your life. For me, it just seems insane. But the thing that really shocked me was that 20% of people admitted that they are genuinely scared to check their bank accounts to see whether they have got enough money to pay their bills. Now, if we go back to step number 2 and we actually plan ahead, we evaluate what extra payments we may have coming out this month, and then we put that money in a separate dedicated bank account that we cannot touch for that month, I have to say, I just personally think there is no way that you can potentially worry about money as much as what you would be in the first place. Now, I'm not saying all the stress around money is going to completely go, but one thing I'm definitely saying is that the stress around money and paying your bills is going to significantly reduce. So that's step number 2. Evaluate the month that you have ahead with your bills or maybe any extra payments. Put that money in a separate account, which is going to be classed as your bills account, and then just leave it for the rest of the month. And basically, those first 2 steps steps that I've just mentioned there are the absolute non-negotiable steps that you should be taking every single time you receive a paycheck. This is just going to simply help you live a better life, and you're going to build a better relationship with your money. What I'm going to do right now is move on to the next 5 steps, which I personally believe are the key steps to actually building financial freedom and actually getting your money to start working for you. And let's start off with step number 3, and that is every time you receive your paycheck, the first thing on your mind, if you have them, is paying off those high interest debts that you owe. Now, of course, if you don't have any high interest debts, then you can go ahead and skip to step number 4 because you don't have to worry about this. But for those that do, maybe a monthly debt repayment is something that you maybe factor into your monthly repayments every single month, so maybe your bills. But one thing I suggest doing extra is if you do have any of those high interest debts, then maybe take a certain percentage of your paycheck to focus on trying to pay these off sooner. Now, of course, every single debt and the terms that come with it is completely different. Some companies don't allow you to pay it off sooner, but if that company does allow you to pay it off a little bit earlier than what you're expecting to, then highly focus on doing this, because having a high interest debt to your name is simply going to be taking more and more money away from you every month. As you may have heard people say, the key to becoming financially free is getting your money working for you. You can do this in terms of what I'm going to be talking about in a second, but with a high interest debt, simply what is going to be happening is quite the opposite. Instead of your money working for you, your money is going to be simply working against you, with that negative interest being taken away from your money every single month. Step number 4 is going to be building that emergency fund. Now, just like in step number 1, like I said, what we're going to be doing is paying ourselves first, and this money is going to go towards savings or investments. Now, when we're going to be building our emergency fund, this is where we're going to be wanting to use our savings. And like I said, if you already have an emergency fund and you know what one of these are, then go ahead and skip to step number 5. But if you haven't, basically an emergency fund is a set amount that we need to have locked away in an account that we can access at any time for an emergency. This doesn't include paying for a holiday. This doesn't include paying for a shopping trip or an expensive meal out. This is for an absolute emergency. So things like losing your job and you need to be able to pay your bills, or maybe something like your car has broken down and you can't afford to repair it. Maybe your boiler's broke down. It has to be for complete emergencies. In terms of the recommended amounts that I suggest you having, I like to say to aim for a minimum of 3 months worth of your monthly outgoing. So just like in step number 2, when we're evaluating how much money we're going to be spending every single month, our emergency fund needs to be at least 3 months worth of that. But I really like to say if you aim for 6 months, then you're going to have absolutely no worries at all. Having an emergency fund is not only good just in case there is an emergency and you're not going to land yourself in hot water, but it's also so good for, once again, your mental health when it comes to talking about money. Once again, just taking a look at this survey that was ran back in 2020, it came back that a third of people in the UK had less than £600 in their savings account, and then 1 in 10 had absolutely no savings at all. Now, I actually have a real issue with this, and I know for some people it's just simply not their fault. There's been some unforeseen circumstances in their life that has led them to this point, but for most people this is completely their own faults as to why they have let their savings account get to this. And all it simply takes is an emergency to happen, just like some of the ones that I mentioned, like losing their job, or maybe just something bad happening that's going to cost them a lot of money, and then they're simply just going to have to go ahead and take out a high interest loan that they're going to have to spend years paying back, and it's just going to simply lead to them living month to month or paycheck to paycheck for the majority of their lives. So in case I haven't hammered home the point already, then step number 4 you are going to be wanting to do every single time you get paid, and that is putting that money into a separate account for emergencies. Obviously, you're not going to be able to build this emergency fund up straight away, but make sure that you are at least dedicating a certain percentage of your income to building that fund up. And then once you hit that 3 months, then you can go ahead and do step number 5, which is investing your money into something where your money is going to start working for you. Now, while saving money is great, there is actually going to be a time that it's going to get to where it's going to become less efficient. Now, the reason why I say this is because if you are saving money into a low interest ISA where it's basically only paying you maybe 0.5% interest every year, what is going to happen is that inflation is going to start to kick in, which normally sits at around 2 to 3% every single year. And this is actually going to effectively make your money worth less less in the long run. However, if we invest it and maybe let's say we can get a return of 10% every single year, we're of course going to knock this inflation out of the park, and it's going to be something that we do not have to worry about. Now, one thing that I'm going to say is I am not a financial advisor, I am no investment expert, but I have had some successes with the investments that I've made so far. And one of my favorite ways to do this is by investing into the stock market. Now, there are a couple of ways that you can do this. You can either invest into individual companies, or maybe you can invest into some lower risk funds and ETFs. Now, one thing that I'll have to say with my investments into the stock market, this year alone, I have seen a total return of over 30%. Now, of course, this is based on only this year only, and it should never be an indicator for the future. But one thing, if you are doing every single time on step number 5 is investing a little bit of your paycheck every single month into an investment. It doesn't have to be the stock market. It could be things like gold and silver. It could be alternative investments. It could be property if you wanted to. It could be crypto if you're feeling a little bit risky or something like that. Basically, if you are investing a set amount every single month on step number 5, what is going to happen is you're going to be doing something called dollar cost averaging. And this is basically the point where you buy a certain amount every single month, whether it's high, whether it's low, and over the course of maybe 10, 15 years, this will completely average itself out. And investments generally, if you're investing into the large companies and the big ETFs and index funds, over time, these generally go up, and I've got data to prove it. If we just take a look at this chart here, which represents the S&P 500, which if you didn't know what that is simply the top 500 largest companies in America. As you can see, over the past few decades, it has seen its ups and downs, but over the general trend over the last maybe 20, 30 years, you can see how much it actually goes up. If you just pick a certain date every single month and invest your money, no matter what price it is, over the time, as you can see, as this goes up, so will your wealth. Now, step number 6, when you get paid, is you are going to want to invest into something that is either going to improve you physically or is going to help with your self-development. This could be investing into gym equipment or maybe paying a monthly gym membership. It could be going out and buying yourself some supplements that can improve your general well-being. Or if you're like me and you're completely obsessed in improving your knowledge in a certain area, it could be going out and buying a book or an online course. I think this is such an important thing to do every single time you get paid, because what it really does for me is it gives me that sense of achievement where I feel like I am improving myself and I am becoming a better person every single month. One thing that I've started doing a lot in the last 2 months is listening to audiobooks. So basically what I did was when I got paid from my business around 2 months ago, I actually invested into Audible, which is the audiobook listening platform. What I'll do is leave a link to that down below where you can actually get a free trial. And it basically cost me £9.99 every single month where I get one book. And I feel that if I listen to one book every single month, just whilst I'm out walking the dog, I really feel like I'm improving my knowledge in certain areas. So far, I've read or listened to one on investing, and so far I've listened to one on YouTube. And with both of them, I've definitely become more knowledgeable in the topics that I'm trying to learn about. But that is simply step number 6. Make sure you do this on payday rather than any other day, simply because the more money you have, the less guilty you're going to feel about spending that money on yourself. And it is so important to invest into your own self-development. And now we get to step number 7, which I personally think is going to be most people's favorite. It certainly is mine. And that is taking the time out when you get paid to treat yourself to something nice. Of course, don't take this one too far and buy everything you can potentially get your hand on. But what I'm trying to say here is that we are working so hard to saving our money, investing our money, building our financial wealth, improving our self-knowledge. Sometimes we need to take a step back and actually reward ourselves for all the hard work that we're actually putting in. And there's no better day to do this when you have the most money in your account on payday. So there you have it. There are 7 steps, or maybe 5 in some people's cases, that you need to take on every single month that you receive your paycheck. Now, I personally believe that if you follow these 7 steps every single month, then you are going to be on the right track to building financial freedom and and more importantly, building a healthier relationship with your money. If you found this video useful, I would really appreciate it if you left a like on it down below. And one other thing, if you haven't signed up to free trade and you wanted to go ahead and grab a free stock worth up to £200 by the way, then go ahead and check out that company and sign up in my link down below. All you have to do is deposit £1 onto the platform and then you will receive a free share about a week later worth up to £200. But having said all that, I'll catch you in the next one. Take care and I'll see you soon.